Nije vijest kada pas ugrize čovjeka, ali vijest je sigurno kada čovjek ugrize psa. Parafrazirat ću staro novinarsko pravilo. Nije vijest da Hrvat radi posla preseli u Nizozemsku, ali kada Nizozemac radi posla preseli u Hrvatsku i pri tome promijeni zakon, pa to je vijest. Jan de Jong. Hello, welcome Jan.
Thank you
very much for joining our show, InvestLab. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
So tell me, how did a Dutchman end up living and working in Croatia?
It's quite a long story. I will try to keep it shorter. When I was 22 years old, I was working in a contact center in the Netherlands. And the founder of that contact center in the Netherlands, that man actually has Croatian roots. And in that final year of my university, I had to write my diplomskiraat, my final thesis. And I basically went to the owner of that contact center in the Netherlands to ask him if he liked the idea of me going to Croatia, where the topic of my final thesis would be to start a contact center in Croatia. And he liked that idea very much. So actually in September 2006, I collected all my belongings, put it in my old car and drove down to Split. And by the time that I was graduated, we employed about 35 people in Split. We had the call center fully up and running. And after graduation, I had a lunch with Mato. And that's the moment when I became a equal partner in the business, on the condition that I would, of course, go back to Croatia to finish what I started. And over the years, fast forward, company grew rapidly. And all the way until the end of 2015, we actually managed to build the company to more than 400 people in Croatia.
No, that is super impressive. You built a company from 0 to 400 employees. That company, for some of the viewers who may not know it, is today the M+Group, employing actually 7,800 people. That's operating right. In 29 companies listed on stock exchange. And actually covering clients from 58 countries, something that is very, very impressive. And you started it. You started the call center, and outsourcing the call center idea wasn't something that was so inherent to the Croatian business environment. It was very, very unusual.
As a matter of fact, most Croatian companies, they were very protective of their contact center. Especially in the larger companies, this used to be a place where you could, for example, transfer people that became redundant, or to, for example, hire family members, as a matter of saying, to have them in your contact center working. And it was very difficult in the beginning to explain to those companies actually that there's a lot of things that we can optimize in terms of business processes, and that we can save them money and that we can increase their performance by outsourcing that to a specialized contact center company. And it definitely took a first few years to finally really get some traction in that. But then once we have been able to get the first, let's say, case studies, then more and more companies started to become open to the idea of outsourcing that. Yeah, and being a first mover in that industry, that eventually turned out that M+Group is a very strong market leader in this industry, in the region.
Yes, and the company managed to scale up, and thanks to the private equity partner, which is, by the way, the largest private equity fund in Central and Eastern Europe, Mid-Europa, the company started to expand internationally, overtaking companies, as I said, in 29 different locations. They took over a really large business in Turkey and then in UK, and it's a company that is, grew and impressive in size. So, you are a Dutch person living now for, is it 14 years or 17 years?
Yeah, a bit more than 14 years.
14 years in Croatia. How do you compare the business environment, in Netherlands and in Croatia? You mentioned all these things about the operational inefficiencies that you encountered coming here in Croatia. What else is a little bit different in Croatian business environment compared to Netherlands?
I don't think that there's an easy answer to this question. I think that the Netherlands, first of all, is probably one of the most competitive markets out there. First of all, labor cost is very expensive. For that reason, I think that companies in the Netherlands, they are constantly on the lookout on how they can optimize processes, basically cutting down on labor cost. And obviously Croatia having significantly lower labor cost than in the Netherlands, perhaps the need to automate those kind of processes was maybe not much there compared to the Netherlands. At the same time, I mean, I'm very often getting the question like, is it difficult to start a business in Croatia? But I personally think it's difficult to start a business anywhere. It doesn't matter in which country. Just in every country there, it's difficult for different reasons. So in the Netherlands, for example, being a very competitive market, it's very difficult to start a business because you have very often financially very strong competitors that are making your life difficult. In Croatia, it's difficult for other reasons, perhaps because of bureaucracy. But at the same time, you have actually in Croatia very often an opportunity to be a first mover in certain things. So when I started this contact center in 2007, we were among the first companies to do that in this region. Then in 2016, after my exit of M+Group, I started a company called Webpower Adria, where again we became a first mover in email marketing and marketing automation. And now my latest venture, in 2020 we started that. It's called Crop, where we plan to actually introduce the Dutch agriculture technology to Croatia. Again, there's very little activity in that segment in Croatia, and we are part of the first movers to do something like that. Also last year, with the digital nomad visa, the staying permit that we introduced, we actually became among the first countries in the world to do that. And these are just a couple of examples of ventures that I've been part of, activities that I've been part of, where I was able to enjoy first mover advantage in Croatia. And I think that's a great opportunity in this country.
No, that is wonderful. So that maybe explain your success in being a serial entrepreneur, and that is precisely, you know, the type of person which is adored by anybody from venture capital industry. And you made some really impressive changes. I would dare to say that in addition to being a super successful serial entrepreneur, you're a change maker in Croatian entrepreneurial business and regulatory environment.
Oh, thank you very much.
And you know, the work that you have done with Croatian bureaucracy, that is just amazing. So, you know, people in Croatia don't even bother, because the attitude they have is, you know, we cannot change anything. That's the way it is. Things are slow, things are very administrative, there is a burden, and you don't want to bribe somebody if you have high ethical norms, not that everybody does. Let's be honest with that.
Do, yeah.
And I do as well. And so you just want to be, so what do? You write a letter to the Prime Minister and you make the change in law. How did you manage to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the nicest things about actually everything that has to do with building companies and marketing, it's the ability to differentiate yourself from others and to be in your way unique. And just like this open letter that I wrote on LinkedIn to the Prime Minister, I don't think that anybody has ever done it. And I don't think that anybody has ever used LinkedIn to start a lobby for introducing new legislation in Croatia. And to me it came very spontaneous. I wrote that open letter. Then of course, first of all, on one hand there was a lot of support for it. So a lot of people on LinkedIn have supported this open letter, and that's why it also came out in the media. But there was also a lot of people that were telling me like, come on man, I mean, what are you doing? Why are you even trying? This is impossible to do. You're not going to accomplish anything by something like that. And then, of course, that lights up a fire in me to try to prove everybody wrong. And at the end we did, because within a matter of 6 months, we managed to add additional legislation to the Alien Act, to the Foreigners Act, that would allow Croatia to welcome digital nomads by granting them staying permits. And that turned out, therefore, that Croatia is among the first 10 countries in the world that is a digital nomad welcoming country. And yesterday actually I got the latest stats from Ministry of Interior, from MUP, and so far we have received 73 applications for the staying permit from 23 different countries. So it's amazing what happened.
No, that is amazing. It's really amazing, not only that you have achieved a very important regulatory change, but also in the really short time span that you managed to achieve that.
In the middle of a lockdown, of COVID-19 lockdown, also over the summer. So I mean, during the holiday period, yeah,
it's pretty impressive.
It even surprised myself.
But you know, maybe tell us like a little bit the inside story. I mean, what was your motive initially? How did you come up with the idea to even start with Digital Nomad Idea? What was, you know, this is something that, you know, now when it's done, we understand a little bit also about, and you can also expand on the benefits of Digital Nomad, you know, what it brings to Croatia. But, you know, this is very impressive about you. Starting a new venture, starting a new business, starting a new regulatory change, which is a change maker to the entire business and you know, economy. And this is how do you do it?
First of all, if I have to say something about myself, I very often turn out at my best in situations that are terrible. When the situation is really terrible, that's when I very often step up and come with new creative or innovative ideas. And it was just at the beginning of the lockdown period that I was asked to participate in a virtual conference on a tourism, it was on the subject of tourism. The virtual conference was called Tourism 5.0, and I was going to get the question of all questions. And that was, what can we do to turn Croatia into a year-round destination? I mean, it's a very difficult question to answer, you know, but we've been trying to answer that question for the longest time in Croatia. What can we do to prolong the season? And as I have no background or no experience working in tourism at all, I called up a very good friend of mine, Paul Bradbury, the owner of Total Croatian News. And I asked him, like, can you maybe send me some articles that I can read before I go onto this panel? Perhaps, you know, when I read those articles, maybe I will learn something, I might even sound smart. And he sent me over a couple of articles, and I was reading that until late in the evening. And all of a sudden, in one of his articles, my eyes fell on the three words, digital nomad tourism. And it was almost like such an eye-opener to me. And it became all so obvious to me. You know, we are all in lockdown. Everybody is forced to work fully remote. Then if you are able to work fully remote, independent from location, then why wouldn't you want to work in Croatia with a US-based salary, for example? And I thought by myself, if Croatia is a country that really lives off of tourism, like 20% of its GDP is from tourism, then if we open up our borders for people that want to come here for 1 or 2 or 3 weeks, then why wouldn't we want to open up our borders for people that would want to stay several months, even all the way up to 1 year? And to me, it somehow just all clicked. And I mentioned that during the virtual conference. The same evening it was covered by the evening news on HRT. And after that I started promoting this concept on my LinkedIn profile. And that's when it just went viral. I had millions of views on those posts and super high engagement. And then after I got all that traction on LinkedIn, then after that I wrote that open letter to the Prime Minister, and the rest is history.
Yes, it's really amazing how you managed to achieve so much. And thank you very much for sharing this story. It is very, very impressive.
My pleasure.
But tell us a little bit about the digital nomads. What type of people are they? What do they bring to Croatian economy?
Well, I would say that digital nomads, first of all, these are individuals that are able to work fully independent of location. They can obviously work fully remote, and they choose to have a kind of lifestyle where they just bring their work with them wherever they go. And this is not new on its own. I mean, digital nomad as a lifestyle already exists for quite some time. But now, because of COVID-19, this whole remote work has been accelerated, and more people are actually now in a position where they can choose to have that kind of a lifestyle. One research even predicts that by the year 2035, that there's going to be over 1 billion people working fully remote. And that's your target audience at that moment. Now, by bringing digital nomads to Croatia, I think that we can achieve two things. First of all, they would be bringing their spending power with them, because these are, in general, people that have relatively high income for Croatian standards. In order to, for example, get approved for your staying permit, you need to show minimum 16,000 kuna, so about 2,100 euros, income per month. That's the minimum that you need to show. If you can't show regular income, you need to show enough savings for 12 months, which is then 12 months times 16,000 kuna. So these, let's say, high spending or higher spending individuals, they would come to Croatia and they would spend their money here, which would be a tremendous cash injection for this country. But something that is probably even more important is that they bring their experience with them. They bring their mindset with them. And if we have enough of those digital nomads temporarily integrating in our society, then I think that they can have a positive impact on the mindset of people here in Croatia, especially the youngest generation.
Yes, and that is very, very important, you know, and if I look at the, for example, venture capital scene development over the last 15 years, it is a very impressive cycle. At CVCA, we started with competitions amongst entrepreneurs 15 years ago, and then it was very difficult to convince talented students to start their own business, to be entrepreneurial, and they would rather go and work for a large company rather than, you know, build their own business, be a founder. But now we also have role models. We have, you know, Alen Sumina with Nanobip, we have Mato Rimac with Rimac Automobili, we have Infobip, we have several of the role models, and then we have a really super talented and smart, science-educated youngsters actually wanting to start their own you know, entrepreneurial venture rather than actually go and work for somebody else, because the valuation of these companies has gone to roof. I mean, you see what the M+Group, which you founded, is worth now. It's sort of millions, you know.
I don't want to know.
You know, but that is your venture. But you are so brave that you actually venture in another business.
Yes.
And that is, you are starting up something that also the venture capitals love, and that is the agrotech plus sustainability crop.
Yes.
And maybe you can tell us a little bit more about that project, because it has two dimensions to it, and it's, you know, Croatian agriculture certainly has a really big room for improvement, and in the sustainability space we also have a big room to improvement.
Yeah. So, I mean, first of all, a lot of the things that I start, they very often come from me just seeing that certain things are either not being done or could be improved. And then very often a good dose of frustration from my side of not understanding why this problem hasn't been fixed yet leads then to me starting a business for that. And coming from the Netherlands, a country that is the second largest exporter of food in the world. I mean, if we're talking about business in Croatia, people always end up talking about tourism. And then if I compare that with the Netherlands, the Dutch tourism industry is 8 times bigger than that of Croatia. But in the Netherlands, nobody talks about tourism because it's a small percentage of its GDP. So I don't think that we should lose anything in Croatian tourism industry, but what I do believe is that we should not put all our eggs in one basket. We should not fully depend on tourism. We should start developing other industries parallel to what we're doing with tourism. Tourism, in my opinion, in Croatia should serve as a very solid foundation upon which we can start building the rest. And then knowing that Croatia in the past used to be a country that would feed an entire region, and that today we are an importing nation, that we are importing more food than that we're exporting, to me that just didn't feel right, and I wanted to do something about it. I wanted to bring the Dutch agriculture technology, so the greenhouses, I want to bring that on a massive scale to Croatia, basically to fulfill two objectives. First of all, to become less dependent on importing food, and ultimately, over time, I think that Croatia should become a food exporting nation again, like it used to be. And you know, a lot of people, they would maybe say, you know, it requires a lot of capital and it's very difficult to do these kind of things. And obviously a lot of people working in the agriculture sector in Croatia right now, they're mostly unhappy with business in general. They all say it's very difficult, and I believe it is. But you know, I think that the moment to make big capital investments is now, because money has never been cheaper to do that. At the same time, there has never been more money made available by the EU to build that kind of infrastructure. I think I read somewhere that in the upcoming 40 years, we are going to have to produce more food to feed the world population than we did over the past 3,000 years. So food production and food management is a serious challenge, and that means for an entrepreneur it's a great opportunity. And that's why we wanted to enter this business, and it's actually progressing very nicely.
No, that sounds really brilliant, and in terms of combining the technology and sustainability, which is what the EU Green Deal and EU Next Generation funds are all about. You know, that's definitely something that is the way to go. And when I think about about Croatian agricultural industry and all of the troubles and the sort of the status of the market at the moment, I always think we focus on the wrong type of product where we cannot have a competitive advantage using the very out-of-dated technology, because there is also one company, and not just one, but several, like Farmeron, Agrivi, you know, there are various technology companies that are working in agriculture, that receive the funding from the venture capitalists, and this is, you know, the smart agriculture, the agriculture of the 21st century, the one that is going to enable to feed I don't know how many thousand people, but definitely to produce all the food. And this is already being done in Netherlands, where the labor is expensive, but they have managed to actually do it in a smart way.
Because they have the highest yield per square meter. And at the same time, they're able to do that with almost no pesticides. The water consumption, they're able to decrease that with some 90% compared to the traditional way of farming. Then what we plan to do in Croatia, for example, is we would build our greenhouse next to a biomass plant. So the biomass plant, when producing electricity, they're producing heat, but that's like a byproduct for them, which they cannot use to dry wood. But if they have too much of it, they just blow it in the air. So what we're going to do is we're going to be using their heat to warm up our greenhouses, so that's completely sustainable. And then on top of all that, because electricity prices are rather high in Croatia, we decided that we want to produce it ourselves through solar. And again, for producing your own solar energy, there are EU subsidies for that made available if you use it for your own production, for your own needs. And in that way, we have green energy, heat from a biomass plant, producing in the most sustainable way nutritious food in a completely controlled environment, using artificial intelligence for our computers to monitor the climate control. And on top of all that, we would be employing a lot of people in areas in Croatia that are desperately looking for new jobs.
That is all very impressive. So technology and sustainability embraced, that is definitely the way to move forward with, you know, a production that is almost organic, if I understood it well.
Bio,
bio, which is, you know, something that consumers want as well, and so and we know that we don't doubt your track record is so impressive that this crop is going to scale up as well and develop in a really nice project and probably motivate some of the younger people to join the agricultural tech and sustainability revolution, which is actually happening globally.
Yeah.
And it is helped certainly by all of these European Union funds. But maybe just to touch base a little bit, you're bringing so much Dutch here in Dutch perspective. Although you have you've been here and Croatia is now your home country for 14 years, but you bring so much of the Dutch mindset and from being very organized to bringing all of this technology, all of these sustainability ideas. What else did you bring? Did you bring, when we think about, Netherlands, we always think about bicycles. Did you bring your bicycles from Netherlands to Croatia?
Well, I live near Split, and first of all, Split is quite hilly. And secondly, it doesn't have really great infrastructure for bikes, bicycle lanes. And I have to say, I feel pretty scared if I would be on a bike in and around Split. And I have to also admit, even though I am 100% Dutch, maybe I'm not the perfect example when it comes to bicycle riding, because I have to admit, the moment that I was able to start driving a car, I don't think, except for a couple of times recreational driving or riding on a bike, I never cycled anymore after that.
Right, and I am completely the opposite.
Yes.
I even sold my car. I'm buying an electric one because I'm really big on sustainability.
Yeah.
And I am cycling everywhere in the city and as well as for recreational purposes.
Yeah.
So you have seen my bike outside.
You would perfectly fit in the Netherlands.
Yeah, I would fit in there.
Yeah, definitely.
But Zagreb is unlike Split, it starts to be bike friendly. It's not...
Zagreb is much better for cycling.
It is flat for most part, and it's slowly changing. Although the culture of other participants in the traffic is not yet there, I must admit.
Yeah, we have to work on that, on the attitude
absolutely,
part.
Absolutely.
Are you rolling? I was going to ask Mirna, who lived for many years, 17 years in London.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm obviously from the Netherlands, and I was perhaps crazy enough to come to Croatia. You are Croatian, but you lived for 17 years in London. What brought you back to Croatia?
Thank you very much for that question. Greatly appreciate it. Actually, when I was younger, I thought I would never come back, because I was working in the world's leading investment banks, and I had a brilliant career. And all my education was there, my friends, and I had a really wonderful lifestyle. Everybody could, at the time, I left Croatia back in '89, and the time I came back was 2005. And I had a tough time not being here for the Homeland War. That was, my heart was falling apart. But I remember that was the time that I actually tried to do something for my country. I organized several of the events with one of the top global magazines, The Economist. We had a very prominent Croatian working there at my college, and I tried to do something to help the perception of Croatia, which wasn't obvious in the United Kingdom. But on the other hand, I never thought I would quit my lifestyle and come back. The decision to come back happened in a very short time frame, and it was, it was really motivated by some of the private factors that I couldn't control. I decided that people from who are close to me, my family members, were so super important, and they were missing me, and so decision was private. It wasn't professional. It wasn't for the career at all. In a way, I renounced a little bit my career by moving back. And but I never regret it, because coming back to Croatia, I managed to have almost the same level of professional satisfaction and challenges, not in a different way, but at the same time, I built up this private, lifestyle as well as my family and obviously my daughter that I'm really fond of, which that was the reason. And now looking back, I think prior to the COVID situation, I was at least 6 times per year in London.
Yeah.
I haven't been now for about a year, but I don't see myself ever actually living in London in post-Brexit world. It has changed beyond what London was when I left London in 2005.
Yeah.
So I'm actually very happy, and I think I very much share with you your love for Croatia, how you can do an amazing business and how you can live super well in Croatia.
But I actually think when you talk about, for example, getting satisfaction out of business, at the end that is very much connected to the actual impact that you can deliver through your business. And a person with your background and your experience that you all got from London, bringing that to Croatia is highly delivers a high impact. And that's why I think that it's actually for people like you very great to actually have a lot of satisfaction out of work by working from Zagreb.
No, absolutely, and you're completely right in that. Here you can have a very meaningful impact.
Yes.
And in London you would maybe earn more money, but money was never a motivator of whatever I did in my life. But you would be a small piece of the puzzle in a really big machine. For me, the industry was investment banking, and I was successful in investment banking, but I was just one sort of
part of a big system,
yeah. And and definitely I wouldn't make an impact as I could here in Croatia. That's for sure.
And to do that in your own country, that's amazing.
But also there is one thing which is very different. There is the work-life balance environment, which is the quality of life here is so much higher.
Yeah, I mention that to everybody.
And this is something that people don't understand. People very much respect your private time, your desire to do things beyond professional life. Whereas, while I was working in investment banking, there was only professional life.
Yes.
There wasn't nothing else.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. You in London, you live to work.
Absolutely.
Yeah. In Croatia, we work to live.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. On that happy note of differences between Croatia and Netherlands and everything else that Jan de Jong brings to us, his expertise, completely different, viewpoint I think I would like to thank my guest Jan de Jong for being here with us, for sharing all of these ideas and inspiration, and from being such a wonderful, genuine person and a change maker to the Croatian business environment. Thank you very much for being part of Croatian, and we greatly appreciate you having you here in InvestLab podcast. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank
really
you.
Appreciate it.